Okay, we're going to talk about two group behaviors that people confuse a lot. So I want to make sure they're really clear. The first one is going to be groupthink. And groupthink is the one I'm going to focus on far more because it's also the one that students struggle with the most. And so we're going to talk about groupthink is all about how we act when we're in a decision-making group where we all need to come together to spend time and figure something out. It's different from, and this is the one people confuse it with, group polarization, which is how people interact when they're discussing things and they hang out with people who are similar to them and then they discuss things. Maybe you're in a clique in a social group at school and you all have a certain opinion about another social group, and the more you sit around at lunchtime and discuss it, the more you're convinced that your opinion is the right one and it grows in strength. So those are discussions, and they can happen online. They can be on Facebook where you're only listening to people who are discussing things in a certain political way, or some kind of a conspiracy theories can be something where they increase the more people discuss them. Groupthink is about decision making. And so it is when people are coming together to decide something and they end up making a not very good decision because the process for deciding was not very carefully planned. So let's go through that. Group decision making, we all think, oh, groups making decisions, well, two heads are better than one. That's a good idea. You want a group, not just one person. That's all true. But we want to make sure that we are careful not to fall into groupthink, because it's so easy to have a decision be ruled by groupthink. So let's say what causes this. It's a way of thinking that, yeah, I want to make sure that you think about this. It discourages individual responsibility and it discourages creativity within groups. How does this happen? There are so many factors, and that's why I'm going to go through it. When group members are unable to evaluate available options, so they're not given all the story, they don't know, so somehow, or they're not given the time to look at many options. They don't understand the consequences, so people aren't giving them an idea of the results that could happen from one decision versus another. You can see a lot of this is based on making decisions too quickly, not going through, taking the time to go through. Now, here we're going to get to more of the dynamics of how human beings interact together. Sometimes there are people who are very loud and confident in groups, and they dominate. And I'm sure you've seen this if you've done any group work in teams and schools and things like that. There's some people whose opinion everybody listens to because they're very confident or they're very outspoken, they talk a lot, and they don't invite other people to talk. So that's another problem. And leadership matters. So if you have an intimidating leader or a weak leader, or I'll go into even more aspects of that leadership, you can have a problem with groupthink. And again, overall, what we're talking about is people ignoring all the facts. They don't want to see all the facts. Okay. If the different world, that's likely to not think things through. They can't make decisions without considering the outside world. And so that's that can influence all sorts of things. They gotta stay focused on how their decisions influence and affect people outside of themselves. If they're rushed, if there's time limits, decision making that ends up being dangerous or in error is much more likely to happen. So you have to be very careful that decisions are not rushed. This is a strange one. The leader, as much as possible, needs to not have a strong opinion, but instead invite everybody else's opinion and draw everybody out. So if you have a leader who's got a strong opinion, other people aren't going to want to go against that leader. And so that leader can really push people in a way that is potentially not healthy or not a wise decision. A famous example of groupthink in Space Challenger, the shuttle disaster in 1986. You guys were I don't think you were born, right? I know you weren't born. But anyway, engineers of the space shuttle knew about some faulty parts for months. They were worried before takeoff. But some spoke up, but their bosses did not want negative press. So leadership pushed forward with the launch anyway. There were people who said, we're not ready. This space shuttle is not ready. We can't do this. And they were not listened to. They were told that they weren't doing their job correctly, that they weren't a team player. And people who knew less about the science behind the space shuttle had more of a role. And again, some of the people who were actually the bigwigs of NASA had the most role in deciding what was going to happen, and they were not the scientists. So this is a good graphic that shows what we're talking about. So do we all agree? The leaders at the head saying, so do we all agree? And everybody wants to just say yes. So they're all saying yes, even though look what they're thinking. And they're just trying not to be the one who challenges. But you need brave people. You need people who understand groupthink and recognize and can see some of these things happening. Here, I just thought I'd show you. This was the crew of the space shuttle. And on that crew, the woman in the back, second from the left, is the first teacher to go in space. And she, of course, everybody who was on this space shuttle died. It was a doomed mission. Groups need leaders for two reasons. Yes, you need leaders to direct the tasks, to maintain good spirits and make sure everybody's speaking. But if the leader dominates or accepts little agreement, you could have a disaster like they had with the space shuttle. And if you think about this, you can think of it in so many ways. You can see it in our politics. You can see it in your work environment. You can see it in local community decisions, all sorts of places. Just watch for it, notice it. And I think you'll see a really good leader wants people to disagree with him or her. A really good leader is looking for people to say that's not accurate, or I don't believe that's true. I have some facts that contradict that, because then you're getting to a good decision. It's really hard because it may take longer and you may have to agonize more and you may not have the timeline that you want, but that's what you